Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all, and I hope you're well. Also those who are practicing from so many places in the world. It's pretty special. Just before I start getting into the talk, just a little announcement about the practice leaders. Sometimes things might conflict and you can't really ring the bell here. If you're having a conflict because you're maybe going to an affinity sit or something, please let us know if you can't make it, so there's always someone here to ring a bell, just as a support for our container. And that was the announcement. And just want to start by appreciating you all. You know, you've just finished day 2. And day 2 in a lot of meditation retreats, for many people, is one of the most challenging days. It's where you may kind of settle into a routine, but also still feel like so many things are coming up. And it might seem that your experience that you're having are in the way of feeling more at ease, more peaceful, or more concentrated. But what I'd like to talk about tonight is that what actually is in the way, what feels like that, is the way. What's in the way is the way. And I remember one of the things that I felt like are really in my way are obsessive thoughts. Physical discomfort on day 2, like pain in the back. But also, maybe you're already having a sense of judging some other people in our community. I had a person, and his pants would always go shwee, 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 shwee. And I was like, okay, there's Mr. Squishy Pants again. Oh. And it was really interesting already in our first session of group meetings, and also know that the online people had a group meeting too. It's just to see that you're not the only one with pain in your back, or obsessive thoughts, or judging other yogis. And I think another thing that I've noticed in our practice groups was that the days can feel pretty long. And boredom might arise. Maybe just as a show of hands, how many people noticed boredom today on day 2? And just look around. Some people are on the fence. You know, that's a really common experience. I was once complaining to my Vipassana teacher in the Netherlands, Hank, and I said, Hank, I don't have enough holiday time. And Hank says, why don't you just go on a week-long retreat? It'll feel like 2 weeks. And tonight I want to talk about challenging mind states. And one thing that I found really helpful in my meditation practice is to tell myself, this experience right now wants to be seen. Because of a myriad of causes and conditions that we don't need to figure out why, but this right now wants to be seen. And when I already have that type of attitude to whatever I'm wrestling with, it's bringing more of that sense of welcome again. This right now, it wants to be seen. And another line that, and I want to title the talk this way, is what's in the way is the way. That really helps me too, because it allows for some compassion and equanimity to arise. And the Buddha often talked about how important it is to keep a wise view on your experience. And one element of wise view is to keep kind of reflecting and connecting with, why am I doing this? Last week we had a talk here in another retreat by Joseph Goldstein. The title was, Why Meditate? And his answer was so simple. make my mind my friend. Isn't that beautiful? And when I bring that wise view in the foreground, it again allows me to meet experiences as they are. So the path that we're on can be considered as a whole life path, with elements of wisdom and view, but also with elements of an ethical behavior, like a virtuous lifestyle, and this mind training that we're doing right now. And that allows for insights, for a wise view. And when I was thinking of wise view, and it's one of my dear friends on the staff here, I had to think of a man whom I often see in the swimming pool in Harlem. And his name is Russell Goings. He's now 93 years old. And he has charisma. Every time when we're in the locker room after swimming, when Mr. Goings speaks, we all listen. You know, and he is very special. He was a professional football player. He was one of the first black stockbrokers on Wall Street. He's actually on the Wall Street Hall of Fame. He set up the Studio Museum in Harlem, and also wrote a beautiful set of poems. So he's a special person. And one time he said, "Bart, yesterday I had a meeting with two of my friends, and they call me Junior." 93, huh? And at that time he said they were 101 and 102. And he said, we had a very intense discussion on the state of this country and politics. And at the end, they said this to me. And I wrote that down. They said, "Junior, your points might be valid and even true, but they're young and unseasoned." Then they said, "You crossed the river or two, but we've been over the ocean and back." And you know what? And he said, "Bart, that changed my view. It made me humble. It made me open to experiences again. Because I was pretty sure about my statements on the state of this country." And that's exactly what this practice is about, is how it keeps informing a wise, compassionate view. And maybe especially around experiences that feel as if they are in the way. And so the Buddha came up with 5 experiences that often feel like they're in the way. And they're called the 5 hindrances. And what they do when they are arising, they cover up. They make sure that we're not really seeing clearly. And the Buddha said, when you have one of these 5 challenging mind states, you're not able to see the good in yourself, and you're not able to see the good in others. But when we become mindful of them, they become an opportunity for growth, because we all have them. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to go over each 5 of you with you in this talk. And the first, in English translated, is sense desire, or craving for pleasure. Let me just let that sink for a moment. Have you noticed a certain wanting for something that you're not having right now? Like, I had this fantasies on retreat about a Snickers candy bar. I wanted a dessert. But also maybe wanting to feel more at ease on retreat, instead of being hindered by all these difficult mind states. Or indulging about thoughts when the retreat's over. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And also for those who are practicing at home, once I did a home retreat and I was walking in a small space, but I could hear my son Lou watching the YouTube. And I'm thinking, let's watch some YouTube with Lou. Just, when you have that craving for pleasure, you just turn to, it's as if what you're having in the moment is not enough. So on retreat, I once read the wrapper of toilet paper from beginning to end, just to get some sense input. So this is desire for sense pleasure. And one times I was so bored and I did the wrapper, but I was like, I have my wallet. I studied dollar bills, my credit cards, just this craving for sense input. That's the first hindrance that the Buddha talked about. Craving. Oh. And every time I'm just endlessly scrolling down on social media, it's just craving for more sensual pleasure. Even when I know it's not going to make me, another video of this young soccer player is not going to bring me happiness, but I'll watch it. He's really good. On retreat once, I was bored and I started fantasizing. And I wrote a whole book in my head. Even I had the title, You're Never Too Late for the Present Moment. Just this sense of constantly looking for, where can I go for pleasure? And the Buddha also was a very didactic teacher for visual learners. So he said, imagine a bowl of water. If the water is untouched and clear, you can use it as a mirror, right? You can see your own reflection in it. But when sense desire is really present, he says, imagine that bowl of water be filled with lac, turmeric, and beautiful dyes. You get lost in the beauty of the colors. You're not seeing your own reflection. And this is not a weird thing to experience because it's also completely in our culture. We are conditioned to need the next new thing. I think sometimes just being content with what you have is the biggest enemy of capitalism. And for me, it's really strange when I'm on the subway and I see these ads, pain, ? You need law. We'll get you money. And I'm always thinking, you need care when you're in pain. But maybe that's my conditioning. And so how to be with this powerful hindrance? The first step in this with all the experiences is, can I be with it? Can I recognize it? Craving is here. Desire is here. Maybe pause right now and check, is there any subtle wanting in this moment? I've noticed that in talks, the wanting is like, it's only usually about 45 minutes. I want them to go on because I don't like the walking afterwards. So it can be subtle. But the Buddha also had another very powerful instruction, and that is to notice when the hindrance is absent. So maybe notice if right now craving is not present. Then you can frame that experience as desire is absence. Feels like this. The second really important thing to meet craving is to ask, how am I relating to this craving? Very often for me there's a judgment about myself. Oh, I have it again. Or I feel guilty after indulging in way too many kettle-cooked potato chips. So what the Buddha is asking us to do with these powerful mind states is to investigate. Can I recognize them? Feel how they manifest in the body. notice what other emotions come with it. And often that will be illuminated when you ask, how am I relating? When you are really kind of visited by craving. And what happens when we keep seeing that over and over again? We gather so much information about this powerful energy of desire that transforms into understanding. And that understanding leads to wisdom. And sometimes you might have even noticed in your practice, the mind maybe wants to go back into fantasizing. And you might go, not that helpful. Let me just stay present here. So also really notice moments when you're actually seeing a familiar pattern you're about to go into, and you don't. That's wisdom. The second one is called ill will. I don't find it a strange word, but it kind of really points to aversion, frustration, anger, resistance. It's basically the flip side of the coin. Instead of wanting, you don't want what you're dealing with. You don't want what you have to be dealing with. And there's so many manifestations of that second hindrance. And they could be small, like on retreat. It could even be like having an itch. You don't want it. Disliking the pain in your legs. Someone in the group said, just pain in the back. Aversion to it. Sometimes I can be impatient with someone who's so mindful putting their food on their plate. I'm like, come on. You know, that whole time of mealtime is where a lot of insights can arise. How you're relating to other people. Can you recognize aversion is here? It's a powerful state. I remember on my very first retreat, I was sitting about there where you were sitting, and it was so still. And I heard myself really loudly swallowing. And all of a sudden I had to swallow so much. And then I thought, my swallowing is too loud. And I was aversive to my swallowing. And then when the swallowing subsided, I started to hear the sound of like, we'd be quiet again and again. And now at first it was just sounds, hearing, but it turned into, I don't like this man. This man is too loud. And I actually started also to think, I'm going to be sitting with this person behind me for 6 weeks. So there was also the fifth hindrance of doubt. And so I was pretty embarrassed to go to my teacher, Carol Wilson, and I told her. And she just smiled, and she goes, IMS hires people just to make these sounds. And at first I was like, for real? But her humor and lightness changed my view. Really. And when I came back, I was just really having this different attitude to this view. It's just like, maybe this person has some respiratory things. Now the bowl of water, is one where the water is boiling. And I like that because anger, especially when it's intense, there's heat. A really huge insight for me in being with anger was when I realized that the part of me that is aware of the anger is not angry. That part just knows. It's not angry. And I had a really cool kid in one of my groups that I used to teach in New York. His name was Carlos. And Carlos was in a residential treatment facility up in Hawthorne, upstate New York, and they would come down to New York twice a week to practice meditation with about 5 or 6 other people and their counselor, Mr. Murphy. And I remember, and our class usually starts with a discussion, mindful movement, meditation. And Carlos ran into the studio that we rented and he says, "Bart, the pause works, man." And I go, "You want to share with us?" He said, "Yeah." And then he goes, "Someone in this room who's my roommate started wearing my pants without giving me, without asking." And I was really upset. And guess what? I wanted to punch you. And he already had his fist up like this. So I was really, really angry. But guess what I did? I paused. And we were like, "Great." No, nothing happened. I still wanted to punch him. And then he said, I paused again. But the third time I said, pause to myself. This thought came into my mind, I'm going to get in trouble for this. Why don't I talk to Mr. Murphy? And Mr. Murphy was there with a big old smile. And then we were all reflecting on how powerful it was, what Carlos was saying. Even his roommate, he kept nodding. And I didn't do that. So when we bring awareness to even a powerful mind state as ill will, that part of that's mindful is not angry. This is how Sayadaw U Tejaniya says it, a monk and great teacher from Myanmar. He says, when you put energy into awareness, you take energy out of the difficulty. So it's not going to go away, but there's more space. And there are a lot of reasons to be angry right now. The state of the world often triggers ill will in this mind and in this body. And sometimes you hear, I thought I always heard that with mindfulness you have to be okay with things. I was going to say shite. Some shite is just not okay. It just isn't. What people have done to you maybe, or what's going on in the world, it's not okay. But the practice is not wanting you to be okay with it. It invites you to bear witness to it. It empowers you to bear witness to it, especially when things don't feel okay. That's the power of compassion and equanimity. This is from Thich Nhat Hanh. He said, around us there may be a lot of anger, bitterness, and resentment. If we do not know how to come home to ourselves, to take care of ourselves, nourish ourselves, we will be overwhelmed by the collective energy of hate, anger, bitterness, and so on. So what we're doing right now is this radical act of coming home to this kind awareness again and again. He also says that the roots of discrimination, conflict, and war are not to be found outside of us. They are within our own way of thinking and looking at the world. The real enemy is our ignorance, our attachment to views, our wrong perceptions. So maybe again doing that exercise, if you pause right now, is ill will present or absent? The third hindrance, when I first heard that in English, I had no clue what they were talking about. The third hindrance was traditionally called sloth and torpor. And at that time, we just had Google. We didn't have AI. It turns out it's this cute animal. And in my language, it's called in Luiaards, and that means lazy one. In torpor, I looked up in the dictionary, a state of mental and motor inactivity with partial or total insensibility. That didn't say much to me either, but what we're talking about here is sleepiness and dullness. Just raise your hand. Who felt sleepy on this day? Whoa. Just look around. I wish the people at home could also raise their hands. It's such a normal part of life. It feels like sometimes I resist sleepiness during the day, and at night I want it. I once remember I was co-teaching with Dara Williams and Jack Cornfield. And Jack was sitting in the middle, and Dara and I were sitting next to him, and it was after lunch. And I had eaten too much. So I was sitting there, and Jack was leading, and I thought I did this just once, like nodding my head once. And so when he rang the bell, he started saying, like, this is, a state where your body might feel a little heavy. It's actually not an unpleasant state, the sleepiness. But you just don't have the focus or the effort to be concentrated. And everyone has it. You too, right, Bart? I know it's in front of 150 people. And guess what I saw? That sleepiness is impermanent. Because in that moment, gone. And here is the thing. Another really powerful thing that you can notice when you are being visited by challenging mind states that feel that they're in the way is to notice their impermanence. And so what you could do when you feel sleepy is to actually become interested in it. And I did that once, and I had a lot of these, but it felt like this wave coming and going. And that's another really powerful aspect of this meditation practice, that you felt with your whole being the coming and going of an experience. And the Buddha had very interesting things that you could do to bring more energy into your practice. He said, open your eyes. Come into standing when you're seated, and I saw a few already do this. You even can do this during a sit. Splash some water in your face. But there was also one. The Buddha said if you feel sleepy, maybe you want to massage your earlobes and pull them. And I remember doing that, and then I looked at the Buddha statue, and I looked at his ears. And this has not any scientific base or whatsoever. I was like, I didn't feel alone. It was just, wow. I still don't know why they have these long earlobes. And again, for the visual learners of us, the bowl of water now is filled with algae and plankton and plants. You can't see your own reflection. When you're sleepy, it feels like this blanket over you. And another thing that you can check is when you're sleepy, notice if you're actually really sleepy, and then really be compassionate, because the last thing the Buddha suggested is to take a nap and rest. But I've noticed sometimes I was actually not really sleepy. I would go back to my room because I just didn't want to deal with some discomfort or fear or worry. Sometimes it's like retreating from experience, and then we get all sleepy. So notice that. Not to judge, but again to be aware. And drop that question. How am I relating? Sometimes I felt as if I was not productive enough if I would take all these naps. But at the same time, I came in this particular retreat exhausted. And what was needed was resting. So really invite you, when you do rest, see if you can make that into your practice too. When you lay down in the bed and maybe look up at the ceiling. Notice when you doze off and when you come back. So again, this befriending of this hindrance of sleepiness and dullness is really helpful. Check right now. Is dullness or sleepiness, is it present or absent? Awareness will tell you. And the fourth of these hindrances is a couple. It's restlessness and worry. When the mind is restless, it's very active. It's kind of the opposite of sleepiness. And often the thoughts are about, how can I fix this? All of a sudden, an idea arises of a problem that you had or an email you had to respond to. How can I fix this? And you start managing your way through this whole problem that all of a sudden you become aware of. Restlessness. And one very simple suggestion by the Buddha when you're restless is to practice mindfulness of breathing. It's in the midst of all these like racing thoughts, maybe just coming back to feeling your body breathe. Maybe taking a few longer breaths and deeper breaths. Not to push the restlessness away, but just have some other experience that you can be aware of in the moment. Worry has an element of fear in it. Now the thoughts usually start this way. What if? What if that person is going to think this about me? What if that is going to happen? Worrying basically is praying for stuff you don't want. It has an obsessive quality, an intense quality, like focus quality even. But you don't want it. This is from Mark Twain. I love this. Without understanding, our worries and thoughts create huge unnecessary problems. And my life has been filled with terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened. And the bowl of water now is touched by wind. Again, you cannot really see your own reflection. Restlessness and worry. And what you can do, and it's a brave thing, if you just be with it, allow how it feels in your body, and to use maybe the technique of making a slight mental note. Worry is here. Or fear. Fear. Worry. If you kind of keep repeating it gently, sometimes that's helpful to stay with it. And it reminds me of one young woman in the juvenile detention center I used to work at, also teaching meditation practices. Her name was Nikaya. And when she was in the discussion part of our session, she said, I meditated yesterday in court, and I kept saying to myself, nervous, nervous. And she said, I was so anxious and nervous. And she also said that it didn't go away. It didn't make her feel any better whatsoever. And she kept saying, my future's on the line, my future's on the line, nervous, nervous. And then she said to the girls who were there on A-holes, she said, remember when you asked me yesterday what the judge said? I started to realize that I could repeat almost word after word what the judge had said. And she said, the previous 2 times I had this blackout. I couldn't have answered you that question. What did the judge say? She said, that's what I realized. And I'm like, wow. We were all like, wow. That's the power again, that the knowing of nervousness, and even if it's just a little bit, is not nervous. It allows for the mind to have other information coming in. Mindfulness will protect you. And 2 years ago I had a heart operation. It was really scary. And I also encountered a lot of fear. And I remember after the operation, the first time someone referred to me as a heart patient, I was like, oh, I'm a heart patient. It sucks. And even when I was with my son Lou in like this fun park, it said, for heart patients, that you cannot go into that one. So what often happens is that we start to identify with these hindrances as if I am fear. And the Buddha taught, he said, nothing whatsoever should be clung to as I, me, or mine. Nothing. And he has a line in the teachings that is everywhere. It's 3 lines. It goes like this. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not my permanent, never-changing self. Because it doesn't exist. It's always in flux. There is no permanent self. And so the this, in these 3 lines, is your experience. So I went, when I felt this fear is not mine. Fear, I am not. Fear is not myself. So if I can remember and bring that into my practice, what's in the way becomes the way. It's okay. I know that's not who I am. It's just this contemporary visitor that's here with me right now. And also that we don't have to hold all of these things alone. One of the most powerful aspects of group meetings that we've had this morning, and also inviting you to please come tomorrow for those who haven't yet, is that you start to see you're not the only one with these 5 hindrances. Maybe check, is restlessness and worry present or absent right now? The last hindrance is doubt. So we have craving for pleasure, desire, ill will, sleepiness, restlessness, worry, doubt. And that one is the hardest to see. But it's really helpful to recognize. It's that experience when you're not sure. You're just not feeling sure. You're not trusting an experience or somebody. And what I found very poignant actually is when I started teaching a lot of young people in New York. And in the summers I would see more tattoos. A tattoo I saw often is trust no one. And it can be directed, this doubt, to ourselves or our abilities. Because that was exactly what I was feeling when this man was going I was doubting whether I could be with that, but ultimately I was also doubting if I could stay with that rage that it was kind of bringing up in me. Can I hold that anger? But the doubt can also be directed externally, to people, to friends, to family. I recently even doubted the institution of democracy right now. Here the bowl of water is turbid, unsettled, muddy, and placed in the dark. A powerful image for doubt. And in the teachings, it's also connected to doubting the practice, doubting the teachers, doubting the Buddha. So maybe check, is doubt present or absent right now? And here it also helps to be in community, because most of the times it's actually my partner pointing me, Bart, you may be doubting something. Because it's a really hard one to recognize. So maybe when you do recognize it here on retreat or at home, that's a powerful moment. Because it can allow you to investigate. What does doubt feel like in the body? What other thoughts come with it? What other kind of habitual patterns? You know what happens for me a lot? I put things on hold. Because doubt feels like, the Buddha says, it feels like you're lost in the desert and you don't know whether to go left or right. And you just become inactive. Doubt. So the invitation with all these hindrances is first that question of pause, and can I be with this? Can I allow for it to feel, to know? And what I found really helpful in being with doubt is sometimes then I will ask myself, what can I actually trust in? Where do I feel like I can really have a sense of security? And even when my body was sick, I did kind of keep having a sense of trust that it's not lying to me. I trusted the body that it's not lying to me. Another thing I really came to trust is loving kindness. The Buddha said, loving kindness is the greatest protection in the entire world. Now that's a pretty bold statement. I trust it. So when I'm kind of unsure and full of doubt, I sometimes ask myself, what would kindness do? Because I trust that. And sometimes it also helps, and here's my friend Russell Goings again coming to mind, what view is helpful? And maybe sometimes when you're doubting also your practice and yourself in meditation or being here on retreat or being at home, is to connect with, what am I doing this again? Why meditate? To make my mind my friend. To again having that overview again. That's why I'm doing this. Someone else in the groups also said, I'm doing this to be present for my 4-year-old daughter. Connecting with things that you're really sure about. When you're kind of full of doubt. What's in the way is the way. So I'd like to close with a poem by Wendy Eckerd. And the poem is called Heart Space, a meditation poem. See how it lands. May you see the crack in your heart. May you see the crack in your heart is a way for your light to push on through. No, there's nothing broken. Your heart is simply opening to illuminate the beauty of your truth. May you see the crack in your heart as a way for your light to push on through. No, there's nothing broken. Your heart is simply opening to illuminate the beauty of your truth. And what's in the way is the way. And thank you for your kind listening. And may your time and practice together be a cause and condition for inner and outer peace.
Thank you for listening. To learn how you can support the teachers and Dharma Seed, please visit dharmaseed.org/donate.